1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Scéalta. Let me remind you that Scéalta is a joint production of Fáilte Appears to Hear and Film Fubble. And my guest this evening in conversation is someone who is probably one of those faces that you kind of see everywhere. You know, if you're a Féile goer, you'll meet her at Féile. If you've got a child at school, you'll meet her at some event. If you live in the west of the city, you'll find that anything that's happening, she's in and about it. My guest is Angie Mervyn. Angela or Angie?
Angie, yeah.
Okay, welcome to Scéalta. And I know you're busy, and I know you have 1,000 things to do, and I know you've recently got yet another appointment, and we'll talk about all of those things. But if you were to summarize anyone, I would inflict this upon you. Thomas Davis said, "Educate that you may be free." And it seems to me, having researched bits and pieces of your life, that you have been an educationalist nearly from the day and hour you were born. You're born into a relatively big family. When Patsy met Murray, what a story in itself. So if I could begin, perhaps, if there is a beginning. So when Patsy met Murray, your mother and father, tell us about that coming together, and how, of course, you're a product of that.
Okay, thanks a million for having me along today, Joe, and it's always really, really good just to get a chat with you, even if it's via Zoom. I suppose really kind of looking back to years and years ago, my mum and dad were really, I suppose, one of life's true love stories, both from down the Falls Road, and very, very proud of it. And Dad was actually due to go to Canada, to immigrate to Canada. And they were at a dance, which I suppose nowadays would be the equivalent of a rave or dance night at Féile. And he met Mum. She was selling tickets for some charity thing. And he said, "Sure, you know, I'll buy all of the tickets that you have if you'll go on a date with me." And the rest is history. So my dad died in 1997, and they were just never apart, and had 6 of us. So I've got 2 sisters and 3 brothers, and 6 kind of nieces and nephews now. So really big family, and it's great. We're all really close and take care of each other.
I said that you are steeped in education, and I want to take you through that, but you're much more than that. You're a partner to Jared, you have brothers and sisters, you're a Hannistown loyalist.
Yeah, love Yara Gaboo.
You're a former St. Dominic's girl. You're a graduate of UCD, and you're all of that. And one of the things that we do when we're doing Scéalta, when we meet a victim, sorry, a guest, I meant to say guest, not a victim, is that we try and get bits and pieces just to give us more than we would know from a formal point of view. And with you, there's a pattern. There's a pattern from people who you went to primary school with, right through to people who you graduated with, and I have to say people who you currently you work with. And they say that you are very quiet when you first meet, and then you're like a volcano. And then when there's something that you are passionate about, that you have to have done, that your ability to understand all of the English language stops because you don't know what no or can't or I'm not sure means. Is that a fair assessment?
It probably is. I suppose I would be kind of shy whenever I first meet people. I step back and I listen and kind of take everything in a work scenario. If I don't have anything to say, I don't say it. Whenever, I'm learning about something new, I'm almost 52 now, and life is a journey of learning. So it doesn't matter what age you are, you're still learning, and you can learn of other people, which I love. So especially even in a work scenario, I've had a recent appointment. I tend to sit back. It was the same whenever I was on the board of Féile. For the first 2 years, people probably thought that I couldn't speak because I soaked everything in. I made sure that I knew about things before I formed an opinion, and talked about things. And I suppose really whenever I've got something in my head, especially when it's to do with making life better for people. I'm a bit like a dog with a bone. Can't doesn't really exist. I don't know doesn't exist in my vocabulary, because if you can't do it, it's nearly a defeatist attitude. There's always a way to do something, even if it's kind of outside the box and innovative. And I don't know, you can always find out. So it is a pretty good assessment.
We actually talked to people who had been in your class in Oliver Plunkett. And
Did you?
We did, yeah. And we talked to your aunt, but you probably knew we'd wrap Geraldine's door anyway. But one of the things, a pattern emerges through all of that. And the pattern is very loyal, very concerned about other people, and part of a team, but never wants to be to the front of the team. And I mean, I've worked with you in Scéalta. I have to say you're a 15-year plus veteran of Scéalta,
Yeah.
and there's not too many can actually say that. But does that come from, if that is a true description of you, does it come from Hannestown, a semi-rural setting? Does it come from a big family? Does it come from Kenway being the organizer of the rest of the children? And I know I'm using that word descriptive, that you're in there. But is that okay? You're a team worker rather than somebody that wants to be in the front of everything.
I think whenever we were being brought up, mum and dad kind of treated myself and my two sisters and my brothers, we were all equal. Just because you were a girl didn't mean that kind of you couldn't do it. So naturally then, especially when you come from a big family, and there's a very big extended family as well, you become part of, you're part of a team, you're part of a family. I kind of I don't really like the spotlight. You see, even kind of doing this today and through work and stuff, I've had to do BBC interviews. Naturally, that doesn't kind of sit very well with me. I'm comfortable with you because I know you're having a chat, but I do tend to stay in the background. Part of that, I'll give you an example. Like whenever we were kids, my mum, my dad was a builder, and mum worked, they had a chippy at one stage, they had a bar in the Divis Flats. They had the Camelot restaurant, which is now the Bengal Spice on the Andersonstown Road. So mum would have worked, sort of in the other businesses that they had. But I always remember coming home from school every day, and the six of us, mum would help us with our homework. And on a winter's day, there was always a big pot of stew or tomato soup with pork pieces in it. And there's that kind of thing where, sort of you sit in the background, but then you have to fight your bit as well. So you see with three big strapping brothers, if you didn't fight your bit, you didn't get seconds, and that second bonus due. So I think kind of way, sort of I would kind of stay to the background a lot, but I know whenever kind of you have your corner to fight, I do it then.
I want to ask you about leaving the comfort of your primary school, which was young children, all friends, kind of way, got to know each other, really grounded each other together in the school, to go to the big hostile environment of probably one of the, and I have family members that go to St. Dominic's, so I'm not hostile to St. Dominic's, but that kind of nearly daunting upper middle class school. So from a working class, your father was a builder, as you say, and had been involved in a number of projects. And I want to speak a wee bit about your father, if you don't mind. But just that transformation from Oliver Plunkett to St. Dominic's, were you comfortable with that? Was it hard? Did you settle in? Were you lonely?
No, I loved every single minute of it. All six of us went to Oliver Plunkett, and you see even now it has a really special place in my heart. Do an awful lot of work with the principal there, Paddy McCabe, as with all the principals. But we had a teacher in P6 and P7 called Miss Dawson, Margaret Dawson, and she, I think, was from Andersonstown. And she really, really believed in us. And I met her at, it was Oliver Plunkett were celebrating, I think it was 50 years, a couple of years ago, and all the old teachers were there. And I met her, and it kind of struck a chord with me, because I was saying, sure, you know, you believed in us. You never gave up on us. And there were 5 or 6 out of our class that all went to St. Dominic's, and we were all really, really good friends. So you see, growing up in Hannistown, my mum and dad had to kind of run us everywhere. You couldn't get buses or walk to meet up with friends. So it was always very much, and there were 3 plus me in that group that were kind of really good friends outside of school as well, and would have gone to each other's houses. I think what made it easier as well was my 2 older sisters were also at St. Dominic's, and Tish and Geraldine, mum's 2 sisters, had also been to St. Dominic's.
Let me say who Tish is, because Tish Holland was your aunt, of course, and I want to talk about Tish as well. So you had a family kind of lineage.
I did, and I absolutely loved it. I loved kind of, you know, every Saturday I would go down the road with my dad, and we would go to the bakery, and on Sunday I always went to 6:30 Mass in Clonard with him whenever I was a kid. It sort of, that got a bit, you know, as I got older, maybe started going out on a Saturday night, the 6:30 Mass probably didn't happen as much, but I loved being in like the heart of the Falls Road. And my Uncle Jim, my dad's brother, lived in Mulholland Terrace. So, you know, if we were out on the sports pitches, you could wave over. My cousin Pamela was in the same year as me. And I have to say, I just loved every single minute of my school journey, right from P1 through until I left. I loved it.
You graduated with distinctions, I have to say, from St. Dominic's, and you went to UCD. So I was asking somebody, how did you take that, going to the big city, this other city called Dublin that's somewhere far, far away? How did you manage that? And they said, "Did you ever watch the Waltons?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Do you remember when John Boy was taken off the mountain to go to school?" That's what it was like. They said that it was weeping of tears, that you were going to another country called Dublin, and and you didn't ever know when you were ever going to come back. And they said that the last thing you done, I don't know, again, this is I'm using somebody else's knowledge, was if you checked your room once, you checked it 50 times before you left to make sure everything was going to be where it was, and you knew where it was all going to be there. So
I did. It was a funny story, actually, because I wanted to do French and Italian at university, and the Italian kind of just whatever way the timetables worked, and I didn't really want to go to Queen's. So I applied to UCD, and I also applied to Glasgow without telling my mum and dad, because they kind of took it that I was going to go to Queen's. And kind of this, you know, sort of wee 18-year-old, and I was working in a coffee bar in the Fountain Centre, the car box at the time, and, you know, had a brilliant family and a brilliant circle of friends. And I organised my accommodation in the halls of residence in Glasgow, and I saved up the money from the car box, and I paid the deposit. And then I said to mum and dad, right, I'm going to Glasgow in a couple of weeks. And they were saying, oh, for a weekend. And I said, no, I'm going to university. Well, my dad went ballistic, and he just said, you're not going, end of, that's it. If you take a year out and apply for Queen's next year, that's fine, but there is no way you're going to go to Glasgow. So long and short of it was I lost the deposit on the halls of residence. And we had gone to Dublin to pick up a friend who was coming home from America. And we had an overnight in Dublin, and I kind of thought, I really like this place. My mum and dad used to bring us down to look at Cleary's windows every Christmas, because that was something really special. So every Christmas, you know, we would have gone to Dublin and kind of as a whole family, and Cleary's windows, and then straight back home. And having an overnight in Dublin and kind of going to a couple of bars and stuff. And I thought, right, you know, maybe it's not so bad. And whenever we got home, the letter had come to say that I'd been accepted into UCD. So kind of all hell had broken loose in a very happy home about Glasgow. And whenever I told mum and dad then I was going to Dublin, that I'd been accepted to UCD, under duress, they let me go because my mum's cousin, Teresa Short, and her husband Phil were living in Dublin. So I lived with them for the first year. My dad actually he took us to see accommodation that was run by nuns, and it was kind of an old convent that had been kind of made into halls of residence. And I always remember looking up, and my dad says to me, "What are you doing?" And I says, "I'm thinking how big the ladder would have to be for me to get out a window here." So he let me go, and I lived with mum's cousin and her husband for the first year, and hated every minute of Dublin. I hated it for the first term, and then I got to know people because I went by myself, and you couldn't have got me home. I worked in bars all through college. I loved it.
Well, I was going to ask you that question, and I should say before I do ask you that question that you graduated with flan honours and colours, as they say. But I was about to ask you, maybe you've answered it before I got asking it. You weren't always a happy student. And you've answered the first year was difficult for you. The mountain was calling you back. Hannah's time was calling you back. Your family were calling you back. I wondered how much that determination that you seen through those bad, lonely days, did that re-emerge in the rest of your life? Because that tenacity you have to see things through. Did you learn from that year of having just to grit your teeth? Did you learn any lessons from it?
I did. And Joe, it was, I was probably very lucky because I was going down to family as well, who really cared for me. But every day I was getting up to go to college, and there was a girl who lived up the street from Teresa and Phil, Shirley, who was starting as well. So I got to know people through her. But I used to come home on the last bus on a Thursday night and go down on the last bus on a Monday night. So I was really only in Dublin kind of Tuesday and Wednesday and home again on Thursday. Really, really just missed my family and constantly thought if I made the wrong decision. But, I had to stick with it. I was kind of going to get my degree. I knew that things would get better. And just because you're surrounded by people doesn't mean that you can't be lonely. Yeah. And I think whenever, you're away, especially from a family who you're very, very close to, and, we would have spent an awful lot of time with extended family. We have the house in Ballyhorn, and I felt as if I was always missing out on something. And part of that was probably nosiness as well, kind of not knowing what was going on. But I settled down, and after Christmas then, I'd made a lot of friends, and I just loved it. And it was funny actually, because I had to go down to enroll about 3 weeks before I started university. And my mum and dad's two friends, Jim and Rose McKernan, they'd lived together when they all only got married in Glengoland, were next door neighbours. And they had moved to Dublin. So we went down and stayed with them. And Margaret, their daughter, is the same age as me. And I always remember Dad saying, right, we're going down to stay with Jim and Rose. Margaret, their daughter, is lovely. And I was thinking, oh God, she's lovely. She's going to be a nerd. I was kind of smoking at the time, kind of starting to go out. Unbeknownst to me, Margaret's mum and dad had said the same to her. So she came home from work and I answered the door. And just like that, the two of us clicked, and we are still best friends. She's like my other sister, over 30 years later.
From UCD, the Blackrock College, and again, having spoken to people who you taught there with, they said that, most teachers, especially young teachers, gravitate towards the authority of the college. They become, either through fear or just because of lack of experience, they quickly become part of the administration. You were a rebel without a pause. If there was a side to be taken, it was always the pupils. It was always the students. And they also said that you were very opinionated towards the principal. I don't know. Is that true? That
was Blackrock College or Turnier. I taught in Turnier, And I was there for about 10 years. If they said I was opinionated towards the principal, it was because he was a really good friend. So you could talk straight. I love teaching. I was working in the Harcourt Hotel, and it was at the time of Riverdance. And Jean Butler and all used to go into the nightclub below and practice Riverdance before that brilliant Eurovision performance on the wooden floors in the nightclub. And it was a mad place to work. Like, you think you would finish work at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 3 o'clock the place was full of people again. And I took a year out after I qualified and worked there. And then I got a job in Turnier College subbing. And I loved it. And they must have liked me because they kept me on. And I taught French and English there, and also Italian. They had an adult education at night, like a program at night, and I taught holiday Italian. And I always gravitated towards the kids that maybe kind of weren't going to do so well, because I thought if you give them a chance, they have a chance to make it, and all you have to do is believe in them. And it actually worked for a lot of them.
I want to come back to that ability to spot the child that doesn't fit in, which is another side or another string to your bow. But you're back in Belfast. You come back to Belfast. And without upsetting you, I want to talk a wee bit about your father.
Yeah.
And I know your father and your relationship, like all fathers, well, it should be like all fathers and daughters, was very close. But it was a truly special relationship that you had with your father. So your father's death, what impact? I mean, how did you?
I think with Dad, with all of us, he was more than just a dad. He was our friend. Like all 6 of us will say that. Our Michael worked with him. Michael is a builder. He was just always there, you know, and so was Mum. So whenever Dad died, I was living in Dublin and teaching in Turnier at the time.
How did your father die?
A heart attack. And it was he dropped me down to the bus station that night, and then I got the phone call. You know, all of us got a phone call. Our Jackie was in the house at the time, so it wasn't anything unique to me being in Dublin. It was the same for everyone else who was living in their own houses. They still got a phone call and had to go home. And you know, looking back, kind of my dad always said that he never wanted to walk any of his 3 daughters down the aisle, and he got that wish because none of us kind of were, the 3 girls still aren't married. But, you know, kind of we laugh about kind of things now, and it's at the stage now after all of these years where you can talk about my dad and smile rather than kind of bursting into tears. I was living in Dublin at the time, and as soon as Dad died, you know, I had kind of 3 nephews by then. I'd been thinking of moving home whenever Dad died. I just kind of thought it's time to go home again. I just wanted to be at home and wanted to be around my family. And I have to say, I took a career break. You know, I didn't resign straight away, and I took a 5-year career break. And Turnier College let me do that, and were really supportive throughout. An absolutely brilliant place to work. And after 5 years then, I decided to stay home. And it was probably the best decision that I ever made.
I want to talk about Jared, your partner. Anybody that knows him calls him Saint Jared because he is a saint.
Stick up with me, Jill.
He told me to say that. You probably get killed tonight when you go home. Anyway. But I want to talk about your Scéalta experience, which continues, and I want to talk about the West Belfast Partnership, and I want to talk about your summer scheme. But I also want to talk about you're not without your tragedies. You obviously, Teresa Hallam, Tish, your aunt, you were very close to, died. You also had a young niece that died. So you're not a stranger to tragedy either. But tell me a bit about Jared. Where did you meet Jared?
I actually met him, Lisa, Henry and Jimmy. Lisa worked with me in Tullymore, and Lisa and Jimmy got married, and I met Jared. at their wedding. You know, I'd known his sister Kate and his brother Fitzy through the Love Yarrick before, and I met Jared, and kind of, you know, we just sort of hit it off, but we actually didn't get together until about a year and a half later. And I'm not very good with dates. He always kind of laughs at me, but I think it's probably 10 or 12 years now we've been together and really happy.
Did he know what he was letting himself in for?
No.
Yeah. Funny enough, you say that. When we were asking about traits and about how people, you know, like are determined, how do they see things, how do they do things, he said that Angela knows the answer to everything. Everything. There's nothing like, if you ask her about nuclear science, she'll tell you the answer to it. She's just one of them people that's just good at everything.
He probably just asks the right questions.
So we'll come back to Jared before the end of our conversation. Tell me and I want to talk about the West Belfast Partnership Board, and I want to talk about your new appointment, but 15 years with Scéalta is quite a prison sentence. So how did that relationship start?
Do you know what, Joe? I love Scéalta. And you see, if there's anything that I'm kind of really proud of what I've been involved in West Belfast, Scéalta is up there, kind of in the top 2 or 3. You know, before I moved home from Dublin, and when I moved home from Dublin, I went to kind of every Scéalta event that I could. It was our kind of annual thing, and you just went and you bought tickets for everything, and it was a social gathering with people that you maybe didn't see year on year. I loved it. And then there was a friend of mine, David Robinson, who was on the board or the management committee, and he nominated me onto it. And it was the first management committee that I was ever on, and it was a real learning curve for me because I was surrounded by fantastic, knowledgeable people that I could learn off, which I just love to do. You were one of them, Danny Morrison, Maura Brown. There were just this fantastic bunch of community people who wanted to have something really different in West Belfast that would make West Belfast this even more fantastic place and put it on the map. I think by the time I left, you know, it was time to go. I'd been on it kind of for, I think it probably was the guts of 15 years.
It may have been more, actually. I'm saying a conservative 15 years. Yeah.
And it's, you know, you have to know as well whenever it's time for new people to come in, for fresh eyes. And it was just that time. I loved working with, you know, Kevin, Harry, Danny, going way back. Just every single person there is a person who wants to give our community something. And it's brilliant. It has a very, very special place in my heart. And I'm really, really proud to have been involved in it.
Well, you haven't gone away, you know.
I haven't, and I'm waiting until I can do scribes at the Rock again and serve people pints in Clonard Monastery.
I said to Kevin Gamble, and he's one of the people I will let you know who spilled the beans on you. I said, well, what did Angela do? What was her job title in Scéalta? What did she do? And he said, everything. And I said, well, he said, well, okay, well, she helped with scribes in the Rock. She made the food for the people who were doing security. She called the meeting. She organized the carnival parade. She called in the winners. She done the presentations. She helped out in Clonard. Everything. But listening to you and seeing your response to a question about Scéalta, it's quite obviously that you love doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
Although it has to be said, you know, it was sleepless nights and wondering, is an act going away in? Is the hall going to be ready? Is it going to rain tomorrow? It was all of that. Maybe that added to the excitement.
Yeah, and it was also, you know, I kind of always, every night at the Marquee, I am just backstage. And, you know, people will often say to me, oh, you met like such and such an act and what they were like. And it's, well, they're normal people. kind of, that's it. They're just normal people who, you know, happen to have had a break and made it big, but they're normal people and they're in West Belfast, and that's it. So you're not going to act any different kind of with anybody. You're just yourself, because they're people, and that's it.
Although I have to say that you always seen the volunteers as special people, and you always treated the volunteers specially, you know, in a special way to make them welcome to do all of that.
Well, things like Scéalta, like so many things in West Belfast can't happen without volunteers. And I think in our community, we have this real kind of sense of coming together and a really robust community infrastructure. And a lot of that is down to what people do off their own bat, don't expect payment for, and just want to be part of it.
I want to talk for a wee while about your role with the West Belfast Partnership, and the title, Education Programme Manager, seems to be like it's nearly a mouthful, and you wouldn't say that if you were out socialising all night. But part of that was, and maybe I know you before you came to that, you'd already been involved in education programs in the west of the city. And I said when I started that Thomas Davis said, education, you know, educate that you may be free. And someone said that you're the only person they ever met who was a teacher and who actually liked it. You know, most teachers have at least one nervous breakdown per week. But how important, I want you to talk about the job, but tell me, how important do you see education in the scheme of things?
I think education it's at the heart of any regeneration, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I think education kind of and qualifications, and I know that GCSEs aren't the be all and end all of everything. I think that gives our kids a passport to employment, and also kind of an opportunity to travel as well. But what you find is most people from West Belfast come back into West Belfast. Education to me is about more than qualifications. It's about kids making friendships, kids having role models, kids being role models themselves, about helping parents to help their kids. And it's about kind of education it's about having a vision where, you know, I often go to conferences and speak at conferences where people will talk about kind of areas of disadvantage. And I remember doing the Scéalta education talk about 3 or 4 years ago. And a community worker in West Belfast kind of said, why do you keep referring to areas of disadvantage? West Belfast is an area of development. And I thought, you're right. So you see to develop an area and to regenerate an area, young people and kids have to be involved in it because they're the ones that are coming up through it. And to me, education is about, you know, sort of giving kids the confidence to find a way to speak out and to give them opportunities to have their opinions. And it's also following kind of that whole line, like my dad, going back to my dad again, he raised all of us. He left school when he was 14, was the oldest of his family, gave all of his brothers a trade. And he went back to Conway Mill and did 2 GCSEs whenever he was 46. And he graduated from Queen's with a history degree whenever he was 51. And I always think that is, our whole family was super proud of him. And you see, for adults to be able to go back and have that opportunity to learn again or to do something that they maybe didn't have the opportunity whenever they were younger because life got in the way. It's education to me is just at the heart of kind of everything we do, and that learning for not just exams, but for everything in your life.
Tell me a bit about the education event or summer school that you do in St. Mary's. Tell me just a wee bit about that, and tell me it as if I don't know anything about it, so that people who are watching this for the first time can get a sense of it.
Okay, so there's 2 things that we do in St. Mary's, and one is the Easter School. and the other one is the summer transition school. So our Easter school started off in Spring Hill 20 years ago with a very small group of kids. And there was a vision there that kids should be given help to get their GCSE Maths and English. You know, we all know our schools I think our schools in West Belfast are great. We've got brilliant principals, but I also know from a teaching point of view that not all kids get on with all teachers, and not all teachers get on with all kids. So sometimes it just takes someone different to explain something to you and something clicks. So we have a partnership with St Mary's University, the Department of Education, obviously, who fund kind of what we do, and Full Service Community Network. And every year in St Mary's University, there are over 200 kids that give up their Easter break to get 4 days of tuition. They get lunch every day. It focuses on Maths and English. For a while, it focused just on maths, and then through the partnership working, you know, that we do with the post-primaries, we could see that the English results were starting to go down. So then, kind of as a response, we were able to put the extra English tuition on as well, because it was a response to need. I remember about 5 years ago, we also had, or 4 years ago, we also had the Social Investment Fund education programme, and we were the lead on that with Greater Scéalta Partnership. And we decided to do a Year 11 Easter school in St Louise's, running at the same time as the Year 12 one in St Mary's. And for 4 days over Easter, there were over 700 kids on the Falls Road over the Easter holidays. It was like every day in St Mary's. I think there was 375 kids that year, because we had a greater intake from Colosh to First Year. And every day, it was just like a scene out of Greece at the end of that movie Grease, where all the kids were coming onto the Falls Road. And I remember just looking, thinking, this is what it's all about. It focuses on kids who are borderline CD and just need that wee bit of extra support to get their Maths and English. All of our schools buy into it. You know, they promote it for us. It's really part of the fabric of West Belfast now. And this year we had to go virtual, kind of like a lot of places. We had to look at different ways of doing things. And I have to say that the partnership with St Mary's University just made it possible. You had Jared and Gareth in St Mary's who did all the recording and designed up, you know, sort of the web page. Tony from Culture First Year. I don't know what I would have done without Tony, even kind of panic phone calls, right? We need to do this, that, and the other. We basically had kind of 19 videos that local teachers recorded through the medium of English and Irish, and they were put up during that Easter week whenever we usually would have had a face-to-face kind of Easter school. I suppose really the brilliant thing about it was we kind of saw an opportunity and thought the kids still need supports, but this is an opportunity for us to expand our reach. And the Twitter and the Facebook were amazing. Like on Twitter, we had over 113,000 hits, and on Facebook, there was almost 13,000 views on the 19 videos. And the largest view was for David Bell will be delighted. It was one of his classes, and it was algebraic fractions, and there was 697 kids, and probably adults as well who needed help, who accessed that one video. So that was the minimum amount of people that we had. It was just amazing.
Those figures are mind-boggling, and even with that, those so many thousand and those hundreds of people who go to the actual summer scheme, you still manage. Somebody told me, if there's a child that's uncomfortable or a child that's unhappy, Angela will find them. I don't know how she does it, but and I said, what does she do with them? And I don't know whether this is your quote or someone else's quote, and said, a hug goes a long way.
Yeah, well, it does. Kind of. And Joe, I always remember, you know, sort of being a child protection training, and someone, you know, kind of saying, you can't hug kids anymore. And I was saying, but, you know, you can't. See, when you get to the stage where, we're in it at the minute, where kind of that physical contact is minimal, and everybody sees the difference that makes. I kind of always do gravitate towards the kids that kind of just need that extra. It's really important. It's really important to me that kind of kids feel that they can get in touch with us or go to one of their teachers who can then get in touch. And I have to say as well, I'm not the only one. There's a team of education people in here, and kind of that is our ethos. If a child needs help, you sort it out no matter what.
I want to talk about your new post that you alluded to. Was it a hard decision? Was it? I mean, I know you don't need any more work, but was it? So you tell us the actual post that you've got.
Okay, so in February, I was appointed along with Frank Maskey and Paul Kavanagh as a Sinn Féin rep to the board of the Education Authority. It wasn't a hard decision at all, Joe. And you see, to be honest with you, it was a lovely compliment to me to even be asked to do that, because it was a vote of confidence in sort of what I do, and kind of the people thought that I would be capable, because it is, you know yourself and anyone in working in education, there were 5 education and library boards, and they merged into kind of one education authority. And it really is an honour and a privilege for me to have been asked and to have accepted the post.
As well as a lot of work. I'll add, maybe you don't want to add it, but I'll add it to it. Good luck in the post, and it's a difficult task, and I think that no better person who will have seen the work from every side, from the practical side as well as from where you are in terms of the education authority. I want to ask you 2 things, and time is rapidly moving on. We've spoken for nearly an hour. It may not, I hope it doesn't feel like that, but it
doesn't.
I know you have a haven, and you mentioned it in passing, Ballyhornan. And is that your hideaway? Is that where life becomes your own? Is that something you've been going there from you were a child, I believe?
Yeah, whenever Mum and Dad were going out with each other, they'd only just got married, and they went out for a drive, and they saw a house on the Collard Road, which kind of overlooked Ballyhornan Beach, and Dad rented it out. And then, obviously his kind of brothers and sisters and my mum's family then would have went down. I can never remember a time in my life when I didn't go to Ballyhornan. And one of my earliest memories is going onto the beach and getting sort of a stone and trying to knock limpets off a rock. Kind of all those memories about going fishing, climbing the rocks, going in swimming in the sea. And, down there, whenever we were kids, we stayed in the army billets beside the bar, and they were rented out, and there was no hot water or anything. So kind of there was us, the Murphys, the Ferrises, and the Devlins. And it used to be terrible. All our mums used to bring us down to the beach with a bottle of fairy liquid, and you got scrubbed down on the beach and then into the sea to rinse yourself off. But that's kind of the way it was. And then Mum got a hot tub, and we used to get bathed in the hot tub then because you had hot water. But that's my go-to place. It's the go-to place for all of our family, right beside the beach. So the house, where our houses are now, kind of my brothers and sisters and mum and all were all on, sort of one wee beach. And no matter where you are in the house, you have a view of the sea. And there's something just very soothing if you're having a bad day or you need to get your head showered, kind of to go down there just kind of makes everything melt away, really.
Every child should have a Ballyhornan. Every child should have that experience.
Yeah.
I talked a lot about education, and I talked a lot about your resilience, and I talked a lot about your experience. And I don't want to dwell on it, but the tragedy of family deaths was very difficult for the family to come to terms with, and also very difficult for you to come to terms with. And I know that Tish Holland, your aunt, was more than your aunt. She inspired you. You actually look like her. And Journey. How difficult was that to get over? Or not to get over, to get through, maybe is a better description.
It was very difficult. You know, whenever I moved home from Dublin, I worked in Tullymore Community Centre with Teresa for years, and then kind of moved to the partnership board then with Geraldine. I think, you know, sort of one of Teresa's legacies, and I always kind of say it, is like, personally, I learned from two of the best whenever it came to kind of make, you know, my work for the community and in the community. I had kind of Teresa and then Geraldine. Teresa was a friend to many of her nieces and nephews. She was very special to me because I worked with her for so long as well. Whenever, you know, Teresa had been diagnosed with cancer, and you know, her death after she was diagnosed was, you know, it was quick. Like, there was a very short space of time before diagnosis and whenever Teresa died. But the good thing was that we all got a chance to spend time with her and say goodbye. You know, you never go to Ballycornan without having a wee beer or a cup of coffee on the rocks and thinking about her. You think about her all the time. It was a very, very tough time for our family. Like, even on my dad's side, we had, you know, sort of Teresa's month's mind, and we had also buried my godmother, my dad's sister, my Aunt Bridge, just a couple of days before. So there's been kind of a lot of death. And then Nuala, Teresa's daughter, 6 months after Teresa, you know, Nuala took her own life, and that has been difficult. But I think as a family, you sort of come together and it makes you stronger. And we're lucky that, you know, if anybody kind of needs to talk, there's always someone there to pick up the phone and talk to. We're lucky we have a family like what we do.
We're almost out of time. We've both done a lot of talking.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed it. I hope you have as well.
I have too, Joe.
In the times when we have so much political uncertainty and so much kind of change and developments and all of that, and you talked so much about your love affair with education, and how education for you is that vehicle out of poverty, out of a way forward and all of that. How do you react when we hear on a regular basis education attainment in some of the working class loyalist areas is so bad? Can we help that? What do you think about that?
But you know what, Joe, we have fantastic working relationships with partners across the city. We currently have a contract with Belfast City Council. We're the lead partner, but it's a true consortium and partnership with the schools in North Belfast, with Greater Scéalta Partnership, South Belfast and East Side Partnership as well. It's in everybody's interest that every single child does well and becomes the best they can be in what they want to be. We have to recognise that not all children are academic, and rightly so, otherwise what would we do? We would collapse as a society. Some kids are, some kids aren't, and it's about helping every single child to be the best they can be and making sure that kids and parents have supports. And I think that community organisations have a massive part to play in that. I think in West Belfast, what we've seen over the years is a move away from schools are schools, community is community, because together we make up our whole community. And that is what kind of other areas are working towards as well. Whenever we talk about kind of, you know, sort of loyalist or, you know, sort of Protestant boys and underachievement, there are Catholic kids who don't achieve as well. And I don't think, you know, sort of that it should be a political issue. I think we should look and say, regardless of who you are, where you're born, kind of what you believe in, and, you know, sort of what area you come from, we all have to work together to make sure that every child has access to quality education, well-being and resilience. Joe, it always struck a chord with me years ago whenever I started working in community, and it hasn't really changed that much, that if you live 1.5 miles away from West Belfast, from kind of where I'm sitting on the Falls Road at the minute, I walk kind of 1.5 miles away and I'll probably live if I lived there, I would live 7 years longer. Now, there's something not right with that. And I kind of look at that and think that isn't a message that we want to be given out to our kids in our community. So you see, anything that we can do to make it better, and education and health are very much interlinked, and they're all parts of the jigsaw puzzle. And it's connecting those parts until kind of the puzzle is complete. And then we look and say, how do we make that puzzle bigger and better? And I think kind of people should be looking to West Belfast as well to kind of see how that is done in many respects, because I love West Belfast. I just love it. And I don't think there's any place like it where you can go and get help from people as well.
I said to you before we started recording, because you were a bit hesitant, you're a bit nervous. You don't do these things willingly. I said there were no trick questions, and that was a lie. There are trick questions. I'm going to ask you the last two questions, which are trick questions. Well, they're not so much trick questions. They're kind of difficult questions. So the first one is, looking back, Oliver Plunkett, St. Dominic's, UCD, Blackrock, all of that, have you enjoyed it?
Loved every minute. Loved every minute.
Well, that's the easy one. That's out of the road. When you look to the future, when you look at this new job that you've got, which is a very difficult job, I have to say, and I should say that I know that you have worked with education ministers, you worked with Peter Weir, and you worked for the late Martin McGuinness and all of that. So you're not a stranger to officialdom in any means, and you're not intimidated by it in any means. Are you optimistic for the future?
Yeah, and I think you always have to be, otherwise kind of the game is lost. And I think kind of as long as you think, sort of in my role in the partnership board and kind of on the education authority and in everything I do, I kind of think, how do you make things better? How do you make things better in the here and now? But how do you future-proof? Are there things I don't agree with in education? Yes. I don't like the transfer test. Sort of if I had my way, that would be gone. I think there's an awful lot of work that needs done on special educational needs. I think that there's an awful lot more work that can be done with people working together in a true collegiate, collaborative partnership in every sense of the word. Because people will say, that kind of I, through my job, lead on X, Y, and Z. I don't, I facilitate. And I kind of make the networks and the connections, but kind of we work together in a partnership where people are equal, and it's how you support each other. Am I optimistic for the future? Yes. And I think as long as kind of we have people who really kind of have their community and making things better at heart, then things will get better, because our kids and our communities deserve it. So why shouldn't they? Why shouldn't they have it?
Well, that's a very positive note, and we wouldn't get a better note to finish this conversation on, except I can hear Ballyhornan calling. I can hear the waves. So I would suspect it'll not be that long, really, before you're down walking in that cold, icy cold water.
Oh, it'll be Friday after work. That'll be me down like a shot.
For being my guest, thank you very much, and for all that work, and I know you've never sought limelight, or you've never sought notoriety, you've never sought all of that, but for all of that, thank you very much. It's been fascinating to talk to you. I suspect we'll have another conversation somewhere along the line. So for that, Angela, thank you.
Thanks a million, Joe. Thank you.